It's time for bookkeeping, beer, and BS. Let's hit Jason's question. I think Jason's question was a real good one, especially like a lot of people are in that boat in a weird economy now of hiring employees. And Jason right now has like an employee, but it's his wife. And they work super well together and they're growing a great business. And Jason, I don't want to like say too much or put words in your mouth, but growing a great business and on that cusp of needing to get a second truck going, needing to find the right people to run it. And it's freaking scary giving up that control of touching everything, right? I've got some thoughts, but do you guys have any thoughts for getting over that fear of hiring employees?
I love talking about this, but I don't want to steal the show. I feel like I want to learn from other people.
Well, I'll say a quick thing and then you go. How about that, Mike?
Okay.
You can bring the thunder. The first guy I ever worked for, his name was Scotty, and he ran a Scotty's window cleaning. And he could never grow past 6 employees because he wanted full control over everything. And I was pretty young at the time, but I could see that he was never going to be out of his business and living his dream because he was way too controlling. So when I started my business, I said, I'm going to trust people until I can't trust them. And that's really hard and it is really scary. However, along the way, I met some really amazing people that were even better at me and at multiple things, right? Like my general manager and some of my supervisors, they have way more passion at some of the stuff than I do. So my ability to trust other people opened up the gates to, now it's a multi-million-dollar business over several states. I would never have gotten there if I didn't trust other people. And there are really good people, but I would just suggest trusting people until you can't trust them, rather than the other way around. My first boss never trusted people and never found trust in people. So that's kind of my thoughts.
I dig it. Angela, what you think?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a lot to give away control, that first thing when it's all you and you're controlling everything, to just trust and give it away. And then I think the thought of duplicating yourself, that, you're finding a duplicate of yourself first when you're if he's at that point of hiring somebody, how can he duplicate and train that person up well to do everything do what he's doing in the field and then keep doing that. And that's how you build. So then he can go off and be selling and building the business. And until you can duplicate yourself and take yourself out of the field, you can't grow.
Really good. I love it. Like the personal story too, Dave, that was good. So I talked to a lot of smaller business owners, and the message I say is pretty consistent. The first is, it sounds overly used and cliche, but your why, your destination, where do you want to be and what do you want out of the business? That's the first step, because you have to know where you're going before you realize the skill sets that are going to be needed to get there. Dan, we've talked a lot about the skill set required to run an owner-operator business is completely different. The polar opposite of running a 7-figure business. You're not doing anything the same running a 7-figure company as you are running a $100,000 business. And so that destination, that why, where you're trying to get to is really important, because what skills you have to acquire, what the gap is, and what you need to continue to learn along the way. And if somebody wants to be an owner-operator and that's kind of what they've chosen, great. You may not need to hire a lot of people. Just get settled in and work on increasing the margins where you want to be. So once you decide where you want to be, you have to build it. And there's this fulcrum, right? You got sales and marketing on one side, lead generation, and you got operations on the other. And I've found, working with hundreds and hundreds of people, that the need to keep your employees paid, to keep people on payroll and employed, is much, much greater than I need to make the phone ring. So when you've got mouths to feed, you've got technicians with kids and office managers with families, and you've got to make sure they get paid, you're naturally going to make the phone ring. So the statement, if you build it, they will come, is absolutely true. But the owner, the person asking the question, I don't know who they are, but the owner has to make sure that they're continuing to up their game, their individual capacity, their ability to lead as they scale their company, because that will be the biggest bottleneck they run into, is their ability to lead and influence other people.
Yep. I've talked about this a few times on various episodes of this show, but I think a good way to just get, I love everything you guys were saying. And I think if I just go back to like the fear of it, and try to like compartmentalize that and stay out of the tactics of how to do it or how to position it. I think it frames up well as just one of those things that like, you don't need to obsess about decisions that can be easily undone. Like, you're not getting married. You're hiring an employee, and you can fire them tomorrow. And in fact, we hire a lot of employees that we fire the next day, because on day one, you can usually, like, they might interview great. Some people are really good at interviewing. Some people are terrible at interviewing. The best interview is the first day, right? And so Jason, I would just say, like, yep, it's super scary. Make sure you have a game plan. Make sure, like Michael said, you know how you're going to get that phone to ring, because now you got more mouths to feed. But don't get too hung up, stalled out on a decision that can be easily undone. It's not hard to fire an employee. Like, if it doesn't work, either because they don't work or the business isn't ready for it. I hired a salesperson this last year, trained him for 3 months, and then said, nope. Wasn't because he was a bad guy. It's because I decided that wasn't the right position for the business. I probably shouldn't have waited 3 months to do it. It cost me a lot of money to train him. But I learned what I needed to learn, which is like, that was the thing I didn't want to delegate. That was like my favorite part of the business. And the business wasn't ready financially to pay for somebody else to do that yet. And so, yeah, it sucks letting people go, but it was a decision that was super easily undone. It was just an adult conversation of, hey, I'm deciding this is the path for the business, and it's my job to just make those decisions for the business. And I wish you the best of luck, but this job's getting eliminated, right? So I think just as far as like getting over the fear, hell, go hire somebody tomorrow and fire them the next day, just to get a rep, right? Like a decision. Like, I'm not saying like go do that to somebody, but like I think we tend to make a bigger deal of things. I had a gal on my show. She runs a $100 million business. She was on the Late Night Happy Hour show. She supports breweries and beverage producers, like with all the state regulations and the shipping and the distribution and all that stuff. Has a $100 million business here in Minneapolis, and she moved her family to Florida. And I was like, how did you decide to do that? And that was one of the things she said that just totally resonated with me. She's like, because if it sucks, we just sell our house and move back. Like, it's so easy to undo. And I was talking about like moving your entire family and selling a house. And she viewed that as something easily undone. And I was like, oh, like when you put it like that, yeah, like we make a big deal out of stuff where it's like we once we make this decision, it can never be undone. And like, there's a couple risks where if it kills you, like literally kills you, that's going to be hard to undo. But there's a lot of things that are fairly easily undone.
Impossible to undo.
Yeah. So like if it's undoable, you know.
And you know, you're not alone. That fear is common to everybody. It's the unknown. Doing something for the first time. It's probably the first time you've ever hired an employee. You have no idea what you're doing. Every time we add a new, we got the roles and responsibilities, we got the measurables, but I have no idea if this is what it's going to look like in 90 days. So I'm going to need you to like work with me and help as we kind of figure out this is together. And keep in mind, just like you said, Dan, if it doesn't work out, I just learned 90 days worth of information. Like, hey, don't do that again. This didn't work. That worked. And version 2, guaranteed to be better than version 1.